And right now we're looking at a live shot at Tamiami Park. This is what it looks like right now. I can see that the equipment is still being affected by the whole situation. Were people disappointed as they left? You mentioned that some people were leaving, Patty, as you were preparing to leave. Were they disappointed, or did they still have a carryover effect from seeing the Pope?
Well, I didn't notice a whole lot of disappointment. I think that people were happy that they got to see him up close as the Pope-mobile was coming through. It wasn't raining nearly as hard, or it was just beginning to rain as the Pope-mobile came through. So people were able to see him fairly close, so that by the time that the Mass started and the rains were coming again, I don't think it was as much a disappointment because they did have a chance to see him. I would like to add, we did come home through the airport. That was about the only way we could find to get back from the site, and they were starting to close it off a little bit. We saw FHP, we saw Metro. It was difficult for us to maneuver to find our way back here to the station, so indeed at the airport they are getting prepared for the early arrival of the Pope. I don't think they expected it this soon, and they were just maneuvering to get into position.
Well, we can find out how that situation stands right now. Eyewitness News reporter Art Carlson is standing by live at Miami International Airport. Any sign of increased activity, Art?
Absolutely, Dwight. Buses have just started to roll in, and we're not exactly sure who all is on them, but they are, as you can see, moving up. I would assume it's press. They're moving over to the press planes. The unfortunate thing about the Pope's departure is that the TWA 727 that he will be traveling on, that we just passed there in the shot, he's going to be getting on board on the other side, completely out of our view. We will have pool cameras, though, over on a flatbed truck over there. We will bring you pictures of the Pontiff's departure, but in terms of actually seeing him in person, I don't think we're going to today. And I should also tell you, well, something is happening. We're getting helicopters around here. He may be immediately within the vicinity. I can also tell you that on the west side of the airport, it is already starting to rain, and planes making their final approach and landing are almost totally obscured by the rain coming in. So this is not going to be the best of circumstances for his departure by any stretch of the imagination. You can see I count 1, 2, 3, 6 press buses now that are over there. There were 4 here a little bit earlier. The 2 L-1011s are specifically for the press, and they are going to be handling, I would imagine, in the neighborhood of about 1,200 people. Now, the 727 that the Pontiff is going to be traveling in is a specially converted plane just for this charter. They have taken 42 flight attendants from around the system, the TWA system, to man the 3 jets. But the 727 that the Pontiff will be in, Shepherd 1, whichever one he is in, will be the one that is configured for him during the 12,000-mile domestic journey. And what this will be is he has been set up in papal quarters immediately in what is first class. The 4-seat area there will be where he is going to be sitting. Now, if we take a look here, I'm starting to get a picture of what's going on. Some members of the church are arriving, and they are moving over to the L-1011. You can see some of the helicopters now flying around, which is the indication to me that, in fact, we are about to see the Pontiff's motorcade.
Art, you mentioned that you could see a cloud mass forming around the airport. Does it look like it might be bad enough to affect...
I'm sorry, Dwight, I lost communications.
You mentioned that you could see a cloud mass forming around the airport. Does it look, in your opinion, be bad enough to affect perhaps their takeoff or the traffic at the airport?
I don't think so, Dwight. In fact, now it's starting to clear. South Florida weather being what it is, here 1 minute, gone the next, but obviously not this morning. I don't think it's going to affect the departure at all. Traffic doesn't seem to have been halted here in terms of the weather, so it should be no problem there at all.
Are those members of the press on this American tour boarding that aircraft?
Yes, they are. They are being herded aboard Shepherd 2, pardon the pun, but they are there. Everybody knows this segment of the trip is over, effectively finished.
And they move on to South Carolina. Now, you indicated that this change in plans in South Florida might affect the plans in South Carolina. Perhaps he'll arrive early and they'll get more time.
Relatively minor, even if the Pope takes off within just the next few minutes, and that's early. I don't think that's going to affect much of anything on the other end. He is going to South Carolina today. He is only going to be there for 5.5 hours, and the subject, he's going to be meeting with church leaders from around the country, and they're going to be talking about ecumenism. Again, that is going to be a very brief stopover. He will not even be spending the night. Tonight at about 8:30, he will be flying on to New Orleans, and that is a rather extensive trip for him. He will be there tonight, tomorrow, and then he'll be leaving on the 13th.
Right now, Art, we have an incredible shot that I think just clearly shows us what the weather conditions are like around the airport. It's a cloud mass with almost an opening in the middle.
That's about it, Dwight. We're blanketed virtually on all four sides. The only exception is, if you look off toward the southeast, there's blue sky showing through there and some white clouds indicating that we're not going to get any rain from that direction. But things have been changing around here so much. The press site has already been underwater today, and we're not even close to drying out. But you know, fortunately, it is held off for us right now, and I think it'll hold off long enough for the Pontiff to fly out.
What's the scheduled departure time if we were on our normal schedule?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Dwight.
What's the scheduled departure time if we were on our normal schedule?
If we were running a normal schedule, it'd be 1:30, which is 40 minutes from now.
So we're not too far off, and it's just a matter of moving things up, I would think. Even if it means spending some time at the airport?
That's right, and he may do that. He may do that just to, as almost a courtesy for the people at the other end, so they're not having to scurry and try and adjust their schedules and security and everything like that. Just as long as we're mentioning this, the fact that he is going to South Carolina, I prepared a very brief segment yesterday that we might take a look now on just giving the whole itinerary of where the Pontiff is going from here. Pope John Paul will only be in Columbia, South Carolina for a few hours. There he'll meet with Christian leaders from around the country, and then it's on to New Orleans, where the theme of his visit is youth and education. He'll address young people, celebrate the Mass, and meet with representatives from Catholic colleges around the United States. His next stop, San Antonio, Texas, where the theme is Catholic charities. After an overnight stay, the Pope will head for Phoenix, Arizona. His visit there will concentrate on health care and Native Americans. He'll visit a hospital and have a dialogue with American Indians. That night, the Pontiff heads for Los Angeles, where the theme is communications. John Paul II will address young Catholics there and in 3 other cities via satellite link-up. He'll also meet with broadcasters and with bishops from across the country. In Monterey, California, the Pope will meet with farm workers. Then it's on to San Francisco, where his visit will center on religious communities and the lay ministry. The last stop on his U.S. visit is Detroit, home to one of the largest Polish communities in the country. His visit there will be capped by a huge Mass in the Pontiac Silverdome. Now, the Pontiff is going to be traveling throughout the United States, Dwight, in the 727 that you see behind us. But when he gets to Detroit and then flies on to Canada, he will be at a 747 from TWA, and that flight will take him into Canada, and then from there, when he's finished, all the way back to Rome.
Art, if you will, I'd like you to share something with our viewing audience. Now that you've had some time to reflect on what happened and that experience at the airport yesterday when President Reagan touched down and then aboard Shepherd 1, Pope John Paul II touched down, take us inside your head, your heart, if you will, for a moment, now that you've had some time to think about it.
Well,
what did it mean to you?
It's interesting, Dwight, and I mentioned on the air yesterday when I was talking with Father Fetcher that I was not raised as a Catholic. I was raised as a Methodist, but the church was a very integral part of my life growing up. It still is. And it was fascinating to see this man who represents not only the head of one of the largest religions in the world, 840 million followers, but he represents something well beyond that, and that's the way I view him, and I'm sure a lot of other people do too, that here is a man who represents the very best in all of us, who represents what the human condition can and perhaps should be. The Pontiff teaches that the ultimate lesson is not hatred, but love, and love, while a term that has all sorts of definition and meaning, we all agree on an ultimate definition in that the old maxim, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Here is a man who is so gentle, who is so at peace with himself, who is so at peace with the world, that he is literally a living symbol. And I don't want that to sound cliche-ish, but for want of a better term, he really is. He's a living symbol of everything that we would like to think ourselves to be, in spite of all the strife that we have here in the world, in spite of the wars, the misunderstandings, the mistrust. There is that constant striving, that hope that we will attain a degree of, and I'm not even sure the word we're looking for, a degree of faith, a level of faith that tells us that yes, we are basically good, that yes, we do love our fellow man.
Art, no doubt an experience that none of us will perhaps ever forget.
Very stirring, very stirring. I'll never forget it, that's for certain.
Thank you, Art, and as soon as you get some movement at Miami International Airport, we'll get back to you. But our coverage of the papal visit will continue right after this. We'll be right back.